Whoops. Oh, I know what happened. So sorry. Technical difficulties.
That's all
W-
right.
When we were troubleshooting that feedback,
Yeah.
I totally forgot I shut the Roadcaster off.
Oh.
Restarted it, and then it kicked it out. So anyway, we'll have groovy music on the outro. So yeah, there you go. Way to bring it back on the first episode after
First
our
episode of Convene, bringing it back strong. Let me
yay.
share it over here to my personal feed.
You know what?
Oh, man.
Screw it.
There we go. Like it.
All right, I feel better now.
It's been a minute.
It
Been a
has.
minute. Yeah. Things got busy on us. You had family stuff. I had training, all kinds of stuff going on. You had the Wounded Warrior Umpire Academy, which is great, all kinds of stuff. So
Absolutely. But we're back.
we're back tonight, which is good. I'm excited. Thanks for having me on tonight, coming back on and
You're welcome for me having you on
on
your
my own
show.
podcast.
Yeah. In that
That's
case,
funny.
thank you for your cervix.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. So, uh, yeah, time to talk. This is a day. This is a day for me, but it's also an important day for us to come and talk about it. We all have our dates, right? Don't we, Andy? That
Indeed.
from being in the military and going through certain things, and this one's the one. This one is, to be honest, this is why there is a Convene Communities. Um,
Absolutely.
and you take the story behind Convene and the creation. You're like, whoa, well, why? How could this day be the reason? You know,
Well,
so
we're going to get into that here in
yeah.
just a moment. But before we do, I just got to say, check out the swag.
Look at the swag,
Hey,
man. Check it out.
hey, I
Look at
finally feel
you.
like I'm part of the crew after like 17 years,
What size is that? Are you
Uh,
like?
extra fat.
I think I had to send you like an extra small or something like that.
I don't know. It fits. That's all I care about. What's up, Mike?
And
Mike's in
Mike,
the room there. Hello,
yeah,
hello. Um, yeah, so I was gonna wear the long sleeve one because it's a little bit rainy out and a little bit chilly, but it's already been
oh, you want to
acquired
you want to
by
show the guns?
well, no, it's been acquired by somebody in my household already, so I can't even find it.
Exactly. That's
I
good.
have a good idea of who. I won't mention any names. My daughter, um, but
Everybody fights over Convene swag.
well, yeah, I guess apparently. I mean,
Everybody should be wearing it. The whole
I agree.
country.
I agree.
That's what I think, for
It's
sure.
uh, it's the shirt with a purpose.
Yep. So hey, we got to welcome. Look, the Death Doula class is here. Thanks for
All
coming.
right.
So, yeah, so good. I'm glad y'all came. To hear the story behind Convene and why you're here and all the great things that you guys are doing over there. So it's very tonight will be very relatable to everything that you're doing. Unfortunately,
So you had mentioned earlier that, or maybe it was you, maybe it was somebody else, maybe it was Tiffany Haddish. I don't know. I can't remember. It doesn't matter. But we can always find, and we should always be looking for the success out of the tragedy.
yeah,
And it's important that we go through the tragedy to be able to grow as humans. And to find those successes. And had the tragedy that you experienced not happened, then we wouldn't be sitting here talking right now.
no, we wouldn't. We for sure wouldn't. There wouldn't be a Convene. And the reason behind Convene is because of a mishap, helicopter mishap that happened, on July 9th of 2001. Um, and so we talk about again, we talk about our anniversary days, we talk about our big days for us when we were, in the military and maybe had something happen to us. Well, this one's mine. July 9th is mine. And it happened July 9th, 2001. So you're talking about July 9th of 2001. You're talking about 23 years. And I've never seen something that brings a squadron, a unit together like this mishap. And it's very unfortunate because we lost three incredible Marines this particular night.
Now
So,
it's important to realize the date,
mhm.
right? July of 2001.
Yeah,
And why is that important? It's because, well, September 11 hadn't happened yet.
no, it had not. Absolutely. Yeah, we were working up. We were doing workups. So this particular night, we were out doing a training mission. And this training mission was to go out and practice shipboard landing. So we were supposed to go out a couple of weeks later and go out on the USS Baton, and we were going to do our ship quals. So you have to go out and get qualified on the ship. So we would be taking the ship down to Puerto Rico, and as we're transiting down back and forth between down and then back, that's when we did all of our bounces and became qualified. So not only do we have to qualify, but we have to qualify, and so does the Navy. They have to qualify as well, and so the people that work on the ship, the ship, there. So yeah, so we were out.
They're called sailors.
Yeah, the sailors. These sailors had to qualify. Yeah, so we were out going out this particular night to do practice shipboard landings on what was called the LHA deck, the landing helicopter deck, and it's on the New River of North Carolina, and it's actually pretty cool because it's a deck that's there in North Carolina, and it's sometimes we practice our landings on a runway, with a ship painted on the runway. Well, one thing about the New River is that it's like kind of like coming over a ship. It's a big concrete pad that's like a ship on the side of the New River. So you actually get that feeling because the New River's down and it comes up and then it levels out. So you actually get the feeling that you're crossing a deck edge. And that's one of the sensations that, we as pilots and crew chiefs have to, work on, is coming across the deck edge that sits pretty high above the water and all that. Because one minute you're, the water's way down there. The next minute you got the deck edge, the ship.
Well, I got to tell you what, there's been many a nights, many a Liberty ports that I really struggled coming across the deck, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's pretty true, right? Request to come aboard. So for sure.
Wait a minute, this isn't my ship.
Yeah. Wrong ship. Come on. Yeah. So we were getting ready. So we were getting ready to deploy. We had no idea, as nobody had any idea that what was around the corner. September 11th was, right around the corner. And it was coming. And we didn't know that it was coming. So, go out, do this shipboard exercise. We depart out single ship, meaning that we had a flight of two CH-46 Echoes. That helicopter right there. It's a big school bus, and we're going to go out. Each aircraft has a crew of five in it. Five in my aircraft, five in the other. I'm the instructor in mine. There's other instructor in another one. We have new co-pilots in there, and then we have instructor crew chiefs in the back with a seasoned aerial observer, and then crew chiefs under training in the back of the helicopter there as well. So instructor in the front, instructor in the back, training the pilots and the crew chiefs is what's going on. Yeah, so we depart single ship, meaning the training exercise as a section didn't really start till after we were done with our practice shipboard landing. So I went down there. We got down there first. We started our bounces, and the Dash 2 got there a couple minutes later than us. And we were working what's called 180 out, meaning, it's kind of a racetrack pattern. Think about NASCAR, that I fly now or that I work at now. You know, when I'm on the deck and I've landed, they're coming on downwind. I lift, they come in and land. And so we're just kind of wagon wheeling around there. And so, yeah, I remember saying to my, um, we had landed. Let me back up. We had landed. You all right, bro?
Oh yeah, told you it's that
Yeah.
damn reflux, man.
So we had landed. We had an aircraft issue inside of my helicopter. So something had gone wrong. Aircraft issue. We had landed at the front of the LHA deck. Dash 2 is still bouncing. They're doing their thing. We're talking about this aircraft issue sitting at the front. It's called the power management system. So we were sitting up front and talking about it. And I asked the gunny, yeah, hey, gunny, where's Dash 2? And he says, "Sir, they're on downwind." So we continue to do our bounces and continue. They continue to do their bounces or continue to fly, and we continue to carry on our conversation inside the helicopter about what's going on with that power management system. I asked the gunny in the back. I say, "Hey, gunny, where's dash two? Can I lift?" And he goes, "Sir, did they call departing?" And I was like, "No, they didn't call departing." Sergeant Salah, who was a new crew chief in the back, I'll get to that here in a minute, said, what do you mean, gunny? Aircraft just don't disappear. And he sticks his head out of the helicopter and he goes, "Hey, sir, are there rocks in this water?" So Sergeant Salah had just gotten there from Okinawa, Japan, where there's rocks in the water and stuff like that. So he's sticking his head out, and it was one of his first flights in the squadron, and that becomes important to this story here in a little bit. And I say, "No, there's no rocks in the water." He said, "Sir, they're in the water. Come up now." I lift up, kick the tail around, and there they were. The helicopter had crashed in the water. Um, It honestly, when I talk about it and I explain like what it looked like, it was like the airline accident. When you see an airline crash and there's debris field, well,
Yeah.
that's where it was. It really was like a debris field in the water, but there's the back of the helicopter sticking up out of the water,
Mm.
and um, we knew that's our peers. That's our peers, and so you can imagine, the stress level that all of a sudden hit everybody inside of that helicopter because we just went from doing a training mission to being an on-scene commander for our peers inside of the helicopter.
Well, let's be honest. It's so much more than just peers.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, let's back up. Let's talk about that. So when I got to my squadron a couple years prior, so this happened in 2001. I got to my squadron in July, excuse me, of 1997. That's when I checked into my squadron time frame, somewhere in there, give or take a month or so. When I got out of my car, and you know this, when you get out of your car and you got to go check into your unit, you're wearing your dress uniform. In the Marine Corps, we called it the Alphas. Well, when I got out of my car, this corporal gets out of his car in his dress uniform, slaps it, throws me the salute. I salute him back, and we walk in together. Well, this was Corporal Beatty, is who this was. So one of the things that HMN 365, our squadron, did at the time is we would have somebody assigned to us. So we would have a combat, you'd be the combat crew. So combat crew chief, and you're kind of assigned together. So I went in, saw the XO. He goes in, sees the sergeant major. When we walk out, we're assigned to each other. Like he's my combat crew chief, right? So what does that mean? That means that we grew up together, right? I did a lot of my flights with him, and you know this officer enlisted and all that. Well, in our squadron, yeah. So it was nothing like I can remember the good stuff, like being in the back of the CH-46 Echo. I'm not flying. I'm back there, and the next thing you know, it's a full WWF fight going on back there where I'm fighting the crew chiefs in the back, so yeah, Mike says, Clark Bay, the tank commander, he had been prior enlisted and he had come over from the Army and he was a tank commander in the Army. So he was a little bit older than, somebody that was a normal corporal at the time. So, but yeah, just good stuff, fighting and you formed this bond with your crew chiefs that you can't even explain because you got to be on the same sheet of music with them. You have to just be able to communicate with them. You got to be on the same sheet of music with them. You're a crew because they're the ones who are going to save your ass if you're up front and you're doing something stupid. And that's really the way it works,
A, a good crew chief will make or break you.
Oh, make or break you. And I used to talk to the young pilots, and I was like, that's exactly what you just said. They'll make or break you. If you go out and you're an asshole to them, guess what? They can bury you. So you better treat them with respect and work with them. And that's what we had in 365. It's like it's my obviously my unit that I cherish. Because we were so close. Not don't take this away but the mishap, but we were just tight. We were a tight knit unit. So, yeah, I grew up with him. He was my combat crew chief. When I went to weapons tactics instructor school, he was my crew chief, and We did Kosovo. He was my assigned crew chief. That doesn't mean that I didn't fly with other crew chiefs all the time, because you do. You fly with other crew chiefs all the time, but technically he was my crew chief. We were close, but I was close with all the crew chiefs. I mean, and everything. So this particular night of this flight, I was supposed to fly with Clark, right? And it was on the schedule. We were set to fly. There we got delayed. We went over to Subway because we got delayed because of thunderstorms, and we came back. And I went in to sign the book for the aircraft. And when I went in to sign the book for the aircraft, he was standing in there, and I was like, "Hey, bro, let me get the book." And he was like, "Well, we're not flying together anymore." He said, "This new crew chief, Sergeant Slaw, is going to fly with you." Okay. That wasn't unusual. Yeah, it wasn't that big of a deal. This new crew chief, Sergeant Slaw, he just got to the squadron. He's going to fly with you. So good to go. So I signed my book. That's like getting the keys to the helicopter, and I start to walk. And he's like, "But we're on the schedule tomorrow night," because we were flying a lot of nights getting ready to go on the ship. So the last thing he said to me was, "We're on the schedule tomorrow night." Right. So here I am all of a sudden, and I'm lifting up. Sergeant Salah's going, "Lift up now." I kick the tail around. I turn the IR searchlight on, and there they are in the water. And it just looked bad. It was bad. So we're all of a sudden on scene commander, and we make the calls, and we're coming up over top of. And this is my perspective of the whole thing. We're coming up, and we're over top the helicopter, and we're looking down, and we're looking for our peers. You know, in our minds, we're gonna get them out. We're gonna do whatever we need to do to get them out. And when we put them, we're over top, we're looking down, we see all of a sudden a helmet pop up. It's good. We got one survivor, right? He's moving around the helicopter, and you can see him climbing around the helicopter, what's sticking out of the water. Next thing you know, you get another helicopter. Well, let me back up. We pull over top, and we try to drop a raft to him, and that raft takes off. The rotor wash and all that, so the raft doesn't go there. At that same time, I got Gunny Collins and Sergeant Salah telling me to pull into a hover and let them jump out. Well, that's not a good idea, because we got helicopter sticking out of the water, so you knew the water was pretty shallow at the time. So not the best idea. So, and then we see this other head pop up. So we see these two moving together, and they're standing there in the water, and they're not moving. We can't tell that they're standing. We don't know how deep the water is. We don't know if they're floating or they're standing, but we know the helicopter's sticking up out of the water. And so we move over, and we drop another raft, and we see them holding on to the raft. Now we're still looking for other heads. Two Cobra helicopters check in at the time, and we have them looking with their IR searchlight, looking for anything they can see in the water. We're waiting on rescue vehicles, and so we decide to go back and land at the LHA deck. And when we land at the LHA deck, we know there's two survivors in the water. Maybe there's more. And so Gunny Collins gets out of the helicopter, and he goes down the embankment there, and he goes into the water, and he's talking on his radio back to us, and we kind of figure out we know there's two survivors. We still don't know if there's others. And so he goes and gets them, physically puts them into the raft, because they couldn't get into the raft. They were banged up. He puts them into the raft, and he pulls them ashore to the shoreline. Well, it's up, it's up a rock embankment. At the same time, all the rescue vehicles are starting to show up, And so then Pedro, what's called Pedro, which is the rescue helicopter that comes out of Cherry Point, we see them coming over the horizon. And yeah, this is the hard part. So the diver goes in, comes out of the aircraft, diver goes down, diver was down, minute, 2 minutes, diver comes back up. Sergeant Salah is standing out in front. He's on his long cord out in front of the helicopter. Pedro comes and lands, and they're facing us. And he walks over to Sergeant Salah, And then all Sergeant Law says is, "Sir, they're all dead. Take me home. I want to go home." And that's it. The only words that were spoken after that were me making radio calls, um, because we knew who had died, and we lost 3 great Marines. The 3 crew chiefs in the back, didn't make it, and the 2 pilots survived, and we went from there, and flew home, knowing that we had lost 3 incredible Marines, and it was hard, and it was hard because you know when you lose your people, you lose your peers, and it just beats you up. It's just hard. And we fly back up, and here's the ironic thing: we're flying back up the New River, and man, the water was like glass. It was just the weirdest feeling. The water, looking down at the water, flying up the New River, there was not a ripple in the water. It was just glass. It was so calm,
Hmm.
and it's silence inside the helicopter. We come in and land, and then when we land, they're waiting on us. So each of us got assigned somebody to escort us in, because we have to go in, and you got to go in and make your statement. And even though it wasn't our helicopter, we had to go in and piss in a cup, and we got to make a phone call. And this people don't realize this. It's a family. HMN 365 was a family. Husbands, wives, officer enlisted. We were a family. And so I got to call my wife, and I have somebody standing this far from me, and you can't say anything. Well, this is pre-cell phone time and all. That's 2001. So I get the phone, and I dial my house number, and it's late now. It's late at night because we're flying night vision goggles, and we lived in base housing on New River at the time. And I remember I called my wife and said, her first words were, "Why are you calling me?" Because we had 2 kids, that were asleep, little bitty base housing, little cinder block house, pretty much. And she's like, "Why are you calling me?" And I'm like, "Well, something happened. I'm gonna be home tomorrow." And she said, "What happened, Matt?" "Nothing." She said, "Did people die?" That's like the first thing out of her mouth. "Did people die?" And when she said, "Did people die?" She already knew that I wouldn't be calling her unless something bad had really happened. Um, and I said, "Yes." And she said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Yes." And now they're telling me, they're going, "Hang up the phone, hang up the phone." They're telling me to hang up the phone. And I was like, "Well, I have to go. I'll be home tomorrow." And so that's all she got from me. Well, where do we live? We live in base housing. So my wife goes outside, and she walks circles around the neighborhood, and she's looking at who's in my squadron and what cars may not be there. So she's counting cars, you know. One of my good friends was the safety officer. So he was the first one to get the call. So she goes by his house, and his car's not there. So she's looking at this house going, is it him? You know, is he one of them? Because she has no idea. Um, so we do our statements. We write our statements, and it took till about 5:30 in the morning. By the time we had done everything, and they finally told us we could go home. And I just went home, took a shower, climbed into the bed, and went to sleep. But she was so good to me during that. Um, well, the next couple of days were pure hell on HMN 365. A lot went on. Nobody knew what had happened. The bottom line, we end up finding out what happened because the two pilots survived. One of the aircraft commander remembers what happened, what went on. Without getting too deep into that, they turned on the red cockpit dome light, so everybody focused on turning the light off, and they took a good helicopter and a perfectly flying helicopter and made 12-second human error and flew it into the water. They think that the time from the light came on, from the time it was in the water, it was 12 seconds total. And that's what ended up happening. I went out with Gunny Collins and Sergeant Salah, and you'll see a lot of pictures, if you haven't seen them, but there's pictures on we have pictures where um, they're out literally pulling the helicopter out of the water. They have a barge out there and they're pulling it. Well, we're sitting there watching this whole thing, me and Sergeant Salah and Gunny Collins. And literally I said a prayer that day, and I said, and this is a true story. I said, this will drive the rest of my life. This will not happen to other people. And from that day, from that tragedy, that has been what I do. That is why there is a Convene Communities. And it's all in honor of these 3 Marines that died, and not to take any away from the other 2, but, Clark was one of my good friends. And not only my good friend, but the whole squadron's good friend. The guy was a true leader, and we all loved him. Everybody did. And that's why today is, it starts, on July 7th every year, and it goes through today. And people go out to his grave. On this day, it's a tough day. It's a tough day, but that's why we're here. That's why, you take the tragedy, you take what's going on, and you try to go out and make a difference in people's lives. And that's why we do what we do, you know?
So, how did Convene form? How did the idea for Convene
Yeah.
form from this tragedy? Because it didn't start out as Convene initially.
No, it didn't start out as Convene. I would go and speak about this, because I would go out and speak about this mishap while I was still in the Marine Corps. Like, I would talk about it because I was there. I was on scene commander. I knew, really what happened with the mishap. Again, it didn't need to happen. I mean, I hate to put it that way, but it didn't need to happen. I mean, we do our briefs and our crew resource management, our pre-flight briefs, and it's level the wing, center the ball, pull power, climb away from the ground. We'll talk about it once we're away from the ground, and that's really it. That's what we brief. But that's not how human error. Nobody meant for this to happen. Nobody. It happened, but nobody meant for it to happen. So I think everybody watching from 365, Mike and anybody else watching from 365 knows that's not who Clark was. And I know Clark is in heaven and he's going, don't let this happen again. Take this. And he was such a good person, such a good instructor, such a good teacher. Don't let this happen again. And our crew chiefs were hard on their younger in a great way. They were hard on it because they knew the importance of the flight safety. And I know that he's sitting there going, don't let this happen again. Don't let people have mishaps. So I took it on, and I was the CRM, crew resource management instructor. And so this mishap there's so much to learn from it that we can talk about it and say, don't make these same mistakes again. Don't make this human error. But it happens. So I would speak about it, and go all over the place. And it eventually it came even after the Marine Corps. I would do it out in the corporate world, once I was medically retired from the Marine Corps. And so I would go out, and speak everywhere. Well, I realized that it's not just about, life lessons learned are important. So it can be about marriage. It can be about, parenting. It can be about so many different things. Not just if we go out and have a mishap or a problem in a high risk environment. So that's where Convene came from. Is can we expand it and talk about all these different things?
I think
You
one of
know?
the basic lessons you could take away from that is that you have to take care of and be mindful of the little things just as much, if
Yeah,
not more so, than you do the big things.
yeah, Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's sitting around and it's talking, it's life experience saying, hey, if you're in this situation, how would you handle it? Well, that's how we learn. We learn through life experience. Honestly, we do. That's important, you know. So we learn through life experience, and no matter what the topic is, we can share it. But that's the lesson that comes from this to me. You know, I used to speak a lot in. I used to speak a lot in the first responder world because I was an air medical pilot, right? So first responders, hospitals. So I had this lady, and she was on the podcast with us a couple months ago, Tara Tucker, and the biker and all that. And so Tara called me one day, and I had done a lot of speaking for her. And Tara called me, and she said, "Hey, I need you to come speak to a first responders group and veterans. There's going to be both first responders and veterans." I was like, "Okay, what do you want me to talk about?" She said, "Well, I want you to tell your story and what you went through." And I'm like, "Okay." And I was like, "Well, talking to first responder, talking to veteran, I was like, well, do you want me to do the normal crew resource management, decision making stuff?" And she's like, "No, I don't." She goes, "I want you to tell your story and I want you to talk about PTSD." I'm like, "The hell are you talking about PTSD? I don't have PTSD. I don't have any issues with, post traumatic stress. I don't have anything that bothers me. So why would I talk about PTSD?" And she goes, "Go read about it." I was like, "What do you want me to read about it for? It's not my issue, not my problem." So I started reading about it in preparation for this, because I dealt with. Remember, I'm working on my counseling degree and all this stuff, and I start reading about PTSD, and I'm reading about it, and I'm like, oh, oh, when I got medically retired from the Marine Corps, I had gotten to the point I did not want to fly anymore. I'd see my name on the flight schedule, and my stress level would go through the roof.
So what you're saying is when you were reading about PTSD, it was like looking in a mirror,
It
wasn't
was
it?
like looking in the mirror. And I never well, I'm a hard ass Marine, right? Bob just said that. Him either, Vietnam veteran Marine. Now, yeah, there's no PTSD. Forget that. No. Well, I started looking in the mirror and I'm like, you know what? This is something I need to deal with. I had moved forward and started flying again because, I needed a job and all that at the time. And so I was flying again and I was working through it, but it was like looking in the mirror you know. Um, so yeah, I went and did this speech thing. Well, one of the interesting thing, if you go to the first Gulf War, as I talked and I told my story and I talked
I
about,
did.
yeah,
Thanks.
did you? Dang, you're old. I think I was in college then, so maybe even middle school or something.
As you were saying, move along, move along.
No, so when I went in to do the talk, there was a gentleman there who was in the first Gulf War. He was artillery staff NCO, and he was at the line that basically pulled the first volleys, and they killed a lot of people. Well, his job at the time was to be the leader, right? One of the leaders of that unit, and now he was a chaplain. He was a chaplain. He became a chaplain later in the army, and then was a chaplain for first responders now.
God, I bet his sermons were loud.
Yeah. But here's the deal. He broke down during that thing and he said, here it is. This was probably 2015. He said, "I've never talked about this, but I've been struggling. And I never knew I was struggling till I sat through this talk." He goes, "Because I was the support for everybody." He said, "I've never took my stuff head on knowing that we killed so many people that day." And it was good. And I was like, all right, we're doing the right things. So I focused on that, getting my counseling degree, a lot of PTSD stuff. And then went through the Wounded Warrior Umpire Academy, which has been a huge help. I'll talk about that here in a minute to me. But while I was at the Wounded Warrior Umpire Academy, I got introduced to this thing called Heroes to Heroes, where I was invited to go to Israel. And I got introduced to this thing called moral injury. Moral injury, never heard of it, right? We talk about PTSD all the time. PTSD is the stress, the actual event, the trauma that comes from what we go through. what is moral injury? That was foreign to me.
PTSD is essentially it's become an umbrella term,
It
really,
has
because there's so
pretty much.
many subsections that come off of that.
Yeah. So you're so right. Is the umbrella is, oh, you got PTSD, PTSD. And we made a lot of mistakes with PTSD. And I'll talk about that in a minute. How we treated our fellow veterans with PTSD, putting them on, medications, putting them on all the things that we did that caused a lot of dependency, caused a lot of alcoholisms, led to a lot of suicides. So I go to Israel and we talk about, I'm introduced to this moral injury concept, and I'm like, that's it. Yes, the traumatic event of being there and being part of that mishap, you can see I still live that. But the survivor's guilt, the survivor's remorse, why did I live and these three Marines died? Why was it not my helicopter? And why was it theirs? Sergeant Salah struggled. We talk every July 9th. Yeah, he struggled with this for a long time, and we ended up talking about it a lot. But they switched aircraft. He wasn't supposed to be in my aircraft. Clark was supposed to be in the aircraft, and they switched last minute. So that survivor's remorse was tough on him, and it's
It's
tough on a lot of
powerful.
people. It's
It's
powerful.
oh my god.
It is. It is
Go
just
ahead.
as powerful, if not more powerful, than the PTSD.
I was just about to say that. Get out of my head.
Yeah. Well, but because it's true. It's true because you do a lot for veterans too, and you do a lot working with veterans, especially through the Wounded Warrior Empire Academy, just to name one. But that is so important, you know. So addressing this thing called moral injury and the survivor's remorse and all the other things that come with the moral injury is so important as well. So, by the way, put up the phone number. I don't know if anybody else will call in or if anybody will call in, but if you're here and you want to call in, please do. I'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear from you and talk about these topics. Um, so, anyway, as you're putting that up, this became my mission, right? This became what I set out to do. And this is why there is a Convene Communities. Is there so many things that we can talk about? There's so many things that we can address. We can help our fellow man and woman in so many different ways. And so it's life lessons. Have you ever been there? What have you gone through? Can we help each other out? Can we tell our stories? Can we talk about what we've gone through? So it doesn't happen to others? Can we create that support network for others? That's so important because it was so important to me. But guess what? For the longest time, I suffered by myself. I didn't talk about it. I didn't know. I didn't. It was just me. Um, and that's hard.
It's the same old trap, excuse me, that we all fall into from time to time. That you just have to remember, Matt. You say it all the time. I say it all the time. Is you are not alone.
No.
It's pretty crazy. I'm going to tell this real quick story, and I will keep it brief. Brought Liam do one of his baseball tryouts last night, and there was a firefighter paramedic there. Had a service dog, and we just got to talking. And you
Yeah.
know where it went down. But anyway, I ended up giving him one of my cards. I told him, hey, anytime.
Yeah.
You can't keep this shit in. But he's expressing exactly that. He was thinking he's the only person in the world going through this, and in the 15, 20 minutes that I talked to him, we had a little mini breakthrough there, man. He got a little
Yeah.
bit teary eyed and realized, oh, yeah, okay.
Well, that's
So
it. Peer to peer. Peer to peer is so important, and that's what you are right then. I talked to this, in the first responder world, they do a lot of if you have a big tragedy, they'll bring in a whole team, right, to support everybody that was involved in that mass casualty. So I was teaching a class one time and talking about these concepts, and there was this young lady in the audience, and she said, "Well, we missed the boat on this, where we just do it for the mass casualties." And I'm like, "Well, okay, what are you talking about? What do you mean? Why do we miss the boat?" And what she said is that what about that young lady who's a first responder who's pregnant and gets called out to a baby with SIDS? And that had happened. And so that young lady walks in, and she's called to a house with a baby that's dead in the crib. But why don't we offer her the same services as we do the mass casualty? Because she's pregnant and she's going through that trauma and stress of what she's, dealing with right there. So there's so much that we can do. So much that we can do. Bob talks about it right here. Seriously, after half a century, it was only recently that I've come to grips with the concept of moral injury. Um, yeah, and he says for me, it was due to the responsibility of individual actions in a war. Finally, that he came to see, and that's right. So it's not just the survivor's remorse. It might be the things that you did, or the things that you saw
I
and all
think
that.
you missed a very important, crucial part of that
Mhm.
statement there. And what Bob's saying is 100% right. He did it. We finally came to see the conflict being unnecessary.
Oh yeah, well that's right.
And and
Yeah.
and he knows this, you know it.
Hmm.
Most civilians don't know it, but we don't go to war because of what the politicians tell us.
Yeah.
We go for the individual on our left and on our right.
Correct.
Um,
Totally.
so the point being is we may not agree with why we're there, but we're going to do what we need to do to come home and bring our troops with us. So
Yeah.
it's a tough pill to swallow, and especially the Vietnam vets.
Yeah.
Bob,
For Bob and
man,
his fears. Yeah. Mm.
if you haven't been told, welcome home, brother, and
Yeah.
thank you, men like
Absolutely.
you blazed that trail for
Yeah.
us to come along and do what we needed to do.
Yeah. And it's frustrating. I think you talk to a lot of veterans, about how, I did the airfield seizure of Kandahar International. And then looking how we left our equipment over there and pulled out, it's like, what about all this sacrifice? What about all the people that lost their lives? I lost friends over there. What about all that went on? And it gets heartbreaking, gets frustrating, Uh, so, um, so Bob, when you talk about that, I want to touch on this. And so, what did I do today? A couple of therapeutic things that have been great for me, and I touched on it. The Wounded Warrior Umpire Academy has helped me cope with this tremendously. Um, it was really, really good going through. Um, it was really good for me to go through that, to know that there's other people that are there that have gone through things just like me. I didn't realize that. That was the first thing I had done vet to vet. And I got medically retired in 2007. That was 2019 when I went through there. Then going to Israel shortly after that was incredible for me. So that was good. Uh, I was hoping she could come on tonight. We're going to do it at a later one, but I'm in the middle of writing a book. So we talk about me, we talk about you, we talk about Bob, we talk about our other fellow veterans here. Well, my wife's grandfather was in the Battle of Leyte Gulf in World War II, and on October 25th, 1944, his ship was sunk. And he floated around the ocean for 3.5 days before he was picked up and survived. Um, and so, he saw his peers die. He saw people get eaten by sharks, all kinds of stuff. He did not talk about this, did not talk about it. It's a World War II veteran, and we all know how they kept to themselves. He did not really come out with the full story. He did not get diagnosed with PTSD until 2005, 61 years after the fact.
Wow.
61 years. So we have not always done things right for our fellow veterans when it comes to this topic here, to include Bob and his peers in there as well. Um, so yeah, so my daughter, I was hoping she could come on. Lainey, who's a sophomore junior, excuse me, at UNC Chapel Hill. We've been writing the book of his story, my story, and it addresses these tools or these topics of PTSD, moral injury, and how we've dealt with it, but how we can offer tools and things to help each other. But it's a book. It's a true, it goes through the account. He and I had this unbreakable bond. He and I was the first one he opened up and talked to about the whole situation. And it's important that we're there, just like Bob said, vet to vet, it's peer to peer. It's important that we're there for each other. And so I'm pretty excited about that. Um, and I think the book is going to be incredible.
I'm
She's the writer of it. I'm just offering the facts.
clearly.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so my buddy Lou says this all the time, and I think this may help some of the civilians that are listening understand. It's not that we as veterans don't want to talk and tell our stories. It's that 9 times out of 10, we find there's no common frame of reference,
Yeah.
right?
That's right.
Like, and I'll give a great example, and I'm not calling anyone out specifically, but you told your story tonight, and someone in the chat room said, "I'm so sorry."
Yeah.
That's not what this is about. The sentiment is appreciated
Yeah.
tremendously, but it's not what it's about, right? It's just we don't want the pity, we don't want sympathy, anything like that. It's just we need to get that story out. We need to find somebody that can relate to exactly that,
Sure.
because let's just face it, if we're in a locker room together, I'm like, dude, that's fucked up. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Uh, but get your shit on. We got to go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Um, that's kind of the major difference is, yeah, we're going to listen to you, but we're also going to tell you, all right, fucking get over. Let's go. We
Yeah.
can
Let's go.
deal with it after mission.
Yeah. That's right. But we're there supporting each other.
Always.
But we're also moving forward in the right way, and we have to. And where we get in trouble as veterans is when we don't have that support there. When we don't have that veteran looking at us, going, "I'm there with you, brother. I understand. Let's go. Let's move on."
And
But we
let's be
have that common ground, and we have that understanding.
sometimes we need a little bit of tough love.
Sure. Yeah.
And our fellow veteran knows when that time is, and they're going to step in and do it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Totally
but
agree with you.
look at that. Billy Bruce joins us.
Hi, Billy. How are you? Yeah. Um, Desert Storm, 1991. Um,
You know,
yeah.
my
So go
oh,
ahead.
sorry. I was just
No,
gonna
go
say
ahead.
my dad never opened up to me either until after Desert
And that's what
Storm.
Bob talks about right there.
And then especially after, this other mess.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, it's just that's it. It's the common frame of reference.
it is. It is the common frame of reference. We can talk, we can understand each other, and kind of know. Yeah, there you go. See that? You see that? Who was the daggone? Look at that. 2019 honor grad.
Hey, I don't want you to break your arm patting yourself on the back there, buddy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That was
Speaking of tough love.
yeah, exactly. Um, but that's what Convene's all about. And that's what, if you go back and you find that's what the story is. That story drives every day of my life.
It's a very, very powerful story.
Yeah.
And it's expected to affect you every time you tell it.
Yeah.
But damn it, I'm tired of it affecting me every time you tell it. So knock it off.
Yeah. Yeah. That's, I told you what I told you before. I was like, I'm doing, every July 9th, I'm getting better.
Yep.
I'm not as affected. Man, it's like I get punched in the freaking nose, and I don't mind it. I don't mind it because to me, it's allowing myself to have that emotion and not feeling bad or guilty or whatever is just fine
Yep.
because it just shows how much he meant and those Marines meant, to
My
us.
my date is June 15th, 2005.
Yeah. And
And an amazing prior Marine, Corpsman, um, prior recon Marine, Sid Baez. Uh, Lost him in Al Anbar province in 2005.
yeah,
So that's my dude, man.
yeah, yeah. And it's not easy, man. I'm just going to tell you, it's not easy.
No.
So, um, here's the thing. We don't have to stay on till 9. There's no reason to stay on till 9. We've talked about it. This is a day for me. This is a day for HMM 365. It's a day for all my peers from that squadron. but it's also the loss of these three Marines have made this squadron tight. You know, I don't think there's, I mean, this day, like I said, we start, we talk about it, we really, you know, support each other on this
Well,
day, and
let
that's a big deal.
let me just say to you and your squadron mates that are here tonight, Semper Fi, brothers.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. So it's good. So Bob, we really appreciate you for who you are and all the things you did for us, how you led the way. That's for sure. Billy,
Thanks, Billy.
yeah, we love you too. Mike, you know, the other people from the squadron. I didn't see all the names of the people that were watching, but you know, HMM 365 is will always live in our hearts, you know, and these Marines will always live in our hearts, and that's for sure. So um, that's what's up, man. Thank you so much for allowing me to come on, talk about it, cry on your shoulder, you know, and for you to pick me up. There we go. HMM 365
Yeah.
listening.
You're once again, you're welcome for coming on your own show. But
Yeah. Yeah.
well, here we're back,
Yeah.
and starting next week we'll be back full time, I
Yeah.
believe. But
Yeah.
anyway,
I'm out flying, but we'll work it out.
we'll
You're gonna
we'll make
see
it
us.
happen.
We're gonna make it happen. So everybody, thanks for watching. Keep watching. You know, connect with us. Let's keep doing great things. It's our job to lift each other up, right? It's our job to make sure we're supporting each other in everything we do. And that's why we gotta convene and come together. Thanks, bro.
Absolutely. Good night, everybody.
Good night.